Hello and welcome to GCSE Sociology Question and Answer Episode 1. So a few of you had loads of questions for me after the mock exams and some of you wrote them down. I've typed them all up for you and here they are essentially. Here's the answers. So let's get straight to it. Two of you actually asked for views on mass media, so I made you a video. I made everyone a video. You can see the link there and I'll put that in the comments below for you. Please watch it. It covers absolutely everything I can think of that you'll need. Mass media used to be a module on its own within the GCSE. Now you're just likely to get questions on it. So please find that video there and then come back to us. Okay, this question jumps around a little bit. Can you summarize the studies? For example, glass ceiling, warm bath, cushion, etc. I'm not sure if you meant the studies which use those analogies or just the concepts themselves. So we'll start off with the glass ceiling. That really comes from feminism and relates mostly to education, to family and social strat. Perhaps crime too, so you could link it anywhere within the exam, but really it's the idea that women are held back by society, by patriarchy, that they can see how to better themselves, they can see how to use social mobility, but they can't get there. There is a glass ceiling there, stopping them being on the same level as men. Usually it's meant in terms of jobs and pay, and you may have heard about the gender pay gap, and obviously there's a revision of that now, and the way in which women aren't necessarily paid less for the same job, but are paid less because they do different jobs. Without getting into all of that, the warm bath is a functionalist view. So it's the idea from family that the nuclear family acts like a warm bath. You come home at the weekend, you relax, and you forget about all the stresses of work. And this links directly to Zaretsky's idea that the nuclear family is a cushion, that it's a temporary softening, a temporary way to forget about the pain of capitalism, to forget about the fact that you are units of consumption. So warm bath and cushion are direct comparisons there. Functionalist view versus Marxist view of the nuclear family. Functionalists are obviously quite positive. Zaretsky, the idea of a cushion is a negative thing, it's bad. It's a false consciousness, as Marxists would like to call it. Those particular studies relate to those two ideas. There isn't a particular study on the spec for glass ceiling, so I hope that answers your question. If that was yours, please comment below and let me know if you need any more help or clarification. Okay, this question, what key studies are easy to remember? And then on the line below, similar to Willis's study. So assuming that's all one question, that's quite broad. I would say mostly what you need to do here, rather than remember the key studies, is remember what Marxists, feminists and functionalists tend to believe. Some Marxists, most Marxists, all Marxists, some feminists, most feminists, all feminists, some functionalists, most functionalists, all functionalists, and make general points around that. So obviously functionalism is the standalone perspective here. It's a consensus theory, social cohesion. People do things because it helps society work together. So you've got the organic model here, the idea that society is one body and all the institutions are different organs and people within it are the life within the body, essentially. So if one institution fails, such as the government or schools or the law, the rest of the body suffers. So that's Merton, Parsons, Durkheim essentially for your most of your modules. You've obviously got Davis and Moore, Cohen, people like that as well. Feminism is the idea that men and women are equal and should be treated such, but they're not, and that's because of patriarchy. And then you have more complex ideas around feminism. You have radical feminists like Delphi and Leonard and family. You have Oakley. You have first, second and third wave feminists who have very different beliefs. And then you have Marxist feminists too. You don't need to know that level of depth for GCSE. If you can remember, Oakley talked about things like housework and gender roles within the family. So did Delphi and Leonard. If you can remember that there's not really a feminist study per se for education, but girls do better than boys at school but get worse jobs, so it links back to glass ceiling previously. control theory for crime. So Carlin and Hyden's own talking about how women commit crime when men let them down. Women commit crime, and there's the chivalry thesis and double deviance. So there's two contradictory ideas going on here. Women get lenient sentences, but women who commit crime are seen as far worse because they're a woman. So really it's this inequality between men and women, that's what you need to focus on. Wolby talks about class in terms of patriarchy too. So because women are discriminated against, because patriarchy oppresses women, there isn't social mobility available for them. Marxism, directly from Karl Marx, is the idea of two social classes. The ruling class, the bourgeoisie, and the proletariat, the people that work for them. Now obviously he was writing at a time when people were going into factories, they were leaving the land, leaving farm jobs, rushing into cities, living in squalid conditions, working horrendous hours in terrible conditions. Life was really bad for the vast majority of people. The idea of the haves and the have-nots there. So that has borne out into the idea of class. And obviously Weber built on Marx's ideas and criticised them and said actually there's more to class and power and status than just a small haves and a large have-nots. So you may want to link that to what you know about the caste system, the feudal system, and then the modern day working middle and upper class, achieved and ascribed status, 7-class system. All of that can be brought out of your arguments around Marxism. In terms of Willis, I left Marxism till last because Willis is a Marxist. He studied the lads, the counterculture at school, the proof that school doesn't actually allow everyone to succeed in a capitalist society, because some people reject that. So whereas Bowles and Gintis had the correspondence principle and said school forces you into roles ready for work, and this is bad, it's not good, like functionalists argue it's a bad thing, Willis said, well, it's not even happening in certain cases. Macho culture, masculinity takes over there. So Willis's study for your GCSE really is about the idea of working class lads. He doesn't look at women, he doesn't look at the middle class. He looks at traditional working class macho values in 1970s Britain and extrapolates from there. If you would like further detail, or there's a particular study you want to know about, please let me know. Please ask another question, send another comment, and I'll do my best to get that to you. This wasn't a question, this was a list of 3 different perspectives on one piece of paper. So if you were the person who wrote that, I think I know who it is. Thank you, because I'm not quite sure what you want to know. The new right obviously is on our specification, Murray and the underclass being the obvious example, Ball linking there with league tables, marketisation and education. So essentially the new right came about in the 70s. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and their relationship across the Atlantic as leaders of Britain and America is really what gave rise to the new right. Thatcher obviously took on the miners, took on the working class, is very, very much despised by those people and their children and the people that came after them because of that, and the communities that were affected in Wales, the north of England, etc. Margaret Thatcher is a very, very divisive Prime Minister. Some people idolise her and think she's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Prime Minister of the 20th century. That's a big claim. What her and Reagan tended to preach was small government that didn't interfere too much, government that wanted privatisation, so private companies doing government jobs traditionally. So they take over the railways in Britain, for example, they take over a lot of areas and run it for a profit. The belief being that if they do that, they will be much more successful and much more ruthless, because business has to make a profit essentially. You don't need to go into all of that for your exam. What you really need to emphasise is the new right dislike benefit culture. They dislike the welfare state. They dislike the idea of people not working for themselves, pulling them up by their bootstraps is the common kind of adage. And this comes straight out of the American dream. So Murray, Reagan would cite the American dream, the belief that anyone can be anything, everyone can be successful, they just have to want it bad enough and work hard enough. Interestingly, there's been a lot of current studies which prove that to be nonsense, and we won't get into that here, it's beyond our scope. But that's the new right perspective, really. It's a more extreme functionalism, as I like to call it. It takes the nuclear family traditional values and goes further to the right of the political spectrum with it. Postmodernism is not something which really comes up. You may remember, some of you, I did a lesson where the analogy was a theme park. Postmodernism sees life as a theme park. Technology, globalization, all of the things, and in fact, if you look at the mass media video, all of those aspects have affected life to the point where we are secularized. Religion is disappearing. That's not true across the world, of course, particularly outside of Western Europe. But for the sake of argument, the importance of religion is diminishing. Science and rational thought has kind of overtaken that since the Enlightenment. And now people can pick and choose what they want. People can decide what life is. People can decide their realities. And that affects every aspect of their life. Interactionism goes back to George Herbert Mead. Really, Becker and his outsider study is the one you need for your spec. But interactionism is totally opposite to all the other sociologies. It's small scale, it's not macro, it's not looking at the whole of society, it's not looking across nations, it's looking at individuals and small groups. How do we interact? How do we view ourselves because of our interactions? How are we shaped by the world around us and how people see us? So the looking glass self, the different labels that people see us and place on us, is how we view the world, and then that's reflected back. So you may think of peer pressure and peer groups, you may think of small groups of people based on shared interests and shared beliefs, being really a defining factor here, rather than necessarily class, race, gender, whatever it may be. That's fraught with difficulties because obviously those things still apply, and not everyone's an interactionist. And actually, postmodernism you can see blending together quite well there with interactionism because of the possibilities of technology and the fact that we're now more atomized. We're not down the local pub, we're on the internet, we're able to communicate with people more like us as individuals than just people who live near us, which was obviously the way life was before then. That's it for the questions this week. I hope that that was really useful. If your question didn't get to me, or you forgot to ask me one, or you just didn't get a chance to write one down, please do. I will endeavour to answer as many as I can all the way through and try and do these as regularly as I can. If you've got further questions or ideas for more videos, please comment below. Please leave messages on the Google Classroom. Please come and see me. Thank you very much.